Welcome to another episode of the Your Longevity Blueprint podcast. Today, my guest is Chase Baldwin, who is a passionate nutrition educator and advocate specializing in the science of amino acids and their impact on health and wellness. Chase has dedicated his career to advancing knowledge in nutrition, particularly through his work with Body Health. His scholarly education has equipped him with a deep understanding of how amino acids play a critical role in bodily functions, metabolism, and overall health. At Body Health, Chase develops educational programs and resources aimed at helping individuals understand the importance of nutrition and optimizing their physical and mental performance. He employs evidence-based strategies to demystify complex nutritional concepts, empowering clients to make informed choices for their well-being. Chase is dedicated to empowering health advocates with clear, practical insights in a field often clouded by corporate marketing and industrial food confusion. His focus on continuous education aims to equip those who help others, addressing the challenges they face and tackling today's expanding health crisis. Welcome to the show, Chase.
Thank you.
Well, good morning to you. Well, tell us about yourself, kind of what your story is, how you landed with Body Health.
Well, I guess you would start by saying I had a very weird out of the box mother, that was into things that naturally nobody agreed with, or I was the strange guy that ate hummus in middle school and elementary school before anybody knew what hummus was. And we go to anyway, I grew up as a kid who was always forced to be natural and eat right, and it was almost a hippie lifestyle before it was cool.
Me too. My parents were growing wheatgrass juice on the counter, and my friends would be like, "Why is there grass on the kitchen counter?" like we eat that, we juice that, and that was years ago. Decades ago, before it was cool to do that. So I can identify with you.
Yeah.
We were lucky.
And
we're very lucky.
Actually, when I came to Body Health, and I started working with Dr. Minkoff, I learned things that just clicked and they made sense. And I told my mom about it. She stopped everything she was doing in her career and she came to Body Health, and she actually works in a channel. So we're in the same room, both educating, because that's what we've all done our entire life. So cool. I get to work with my family every day now still. Awesome. Anyway, it's weird how life changes. My goal in life was always a moving target. I want to be an astronaut. I was never wanting to be an astronaut. It's silly, but I always had an idea of what I wanted to be, and that idea was always fleeting. Like, get there, do it, achieve something, and move on. And I'm obsessive about learning about specific areas. Like if I find a category that interests me, like right now I'm on I'm not going to show you that, but I'm on GLP-1, and because I've been combating people who think everything's amazing about GLP-1 and Ozempic and all of these technologies, and there's elements of marketing that have hidden truths.
Sure.
Anyway.
Sure.
So I go down rabbit holes and find myself to be like this expert. And it has happened in career after career. And when Dr. Minkoff came on and I started learning about medical research and being able to read and access that and learn the databases of how to actually validate information on what's real and what's not, my natural abilities kind of took over. And it's the first time in my life that I was actually doing something that helped humanity, as opposed to doing something that was cool or trendy or helped a small group of people. I was very good at helping rich people because they seem to have the money to pay my bills. And now I don't care if you have money. I spend most of my time working with Amish communities. And actually, I've spent this entire morning on the phone with 5 different Amish doctors, one after the other, from their database of everything research-wise, because they don't have the ability to research. So they call me about pregnancies that have gone awry. It's interesting. So anyway, that's me.
Yeah. So you mentioned Dr. Minkoff. My audience may not know who he is. He's the author of this book, which we do sell at the clinic, Search for the Perfect Protein, which is the topic of today. We're going to talk about these perfect aminos that I understand he invented. Well, do I say invented, created, this blend that he
didn't create it. He didn't invent it. Obviously, amino acids have been around a long time.
Right.
He did bring them to this country and make awareness about them, and has been really the driving force behind continuing their development. So it originally came in 25 years ago, what she says in the book. It changed his life. And at that point, when it came over, the research was pretty stabilized, and what was, and that was it. And it was only him who decided, that needed to continue to develop so that more and more people could actually have access. Because with it came in a little small, very expensive bottle of tablets, and hard to swallow. Kids couldn't take them. Lots of challenges. So developing them into powders, adding nucleotides and nucleosides to it to help aging patients achieve more from Perfect Amino, base formula. As their DNA and RNA diminishes in production, their use for protein structures diminishes. It's getting old, right?
Sure. I want to get to Perfect Aminos, kind of what that blend is of those amino acids, but can you tell us like the fun stuff about Dr. Minkoff? So like, who is he? What's he done? He's quite the athlete. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, he's a gazillion time Ironman triathlete. He's done probably around 200 half Ironman triathlons. He actually just finished one in North Carolina 2 weeks ago, a week ago. Just, it's fine. It's whatever. He's 76 years old. He came in second in his age group. Was back to work the next day. He board certified pediatric medicine, runs LifeWorks Wellness Center. It's an integrative clinic. He's the medical director there. I believe he still works about 60 hours a week in his day job, and then does podcasts and interviews, and still goes to conferences constantly, and still spends quality time with all of his family and all of his grandkids. The guy's ridiculous. I hope I have half the virility when I'm his age, but I don't know. I don't think many people do. And it's not because of his genes, right? Like genetically, you would think somebody's just inherently
a mutant.
Better.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, his brothers and sisters, his brothers were overweight, heart disease, diabetes. Like he does not come from the stock of that.
He didn't win the genetic lottery, but he's made good lifestyle choices. Yeah, it sounds like.
Exactly. Exactly. Like he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning. By 6 a.m., he swam 2 miles. Like,
yeah, he's incredible. He's inspiring. Yeah.
That's his daily routine at 76.
Well, maybe the fact that he's had access to these Perfect Aminos for a while has helped. So let's get on to the topic of today, but let's break down what protein is. So why is protein so important? You kind of mentioned as we age, we obviously need these amino acids, but let's talk about protein, kind of why it's important. And then I want to get into why all proteins aren't created equal, but let's start with what protein is.
So, what protein is, in essence, it is a third of our body. It is all the structure of life. On this planet, we are carbon organisms. The difference between a carbohydrate or a carbon structure and a protein structure is simply the nitrogen, the amino that's connected to it. Like if you remove nitrogen from protein, you now have a carbohydrate. So legitimately, it is all the structure that we know on planet Earth, right? And amino acids themselves are what make that protein. A cow with 5 stomachs and the ability to cut can pull amino acids that we could never achieve out of something that to us isn't even digestible. It's fiber, and they can grow and thrive off of it, right? But it's everywhere. If you take your human structure and you remove water and fat, all you're left with is protein, getting further down the line, nothing but amino acids. It is life.
Totally. Building blocks of life, right? So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, because you're the expert on this, not me, but protein breaks down to peptides, peptides break down to amino acids, right? Correct. So we're more going to talk about, I just wanted to set the stage for what protein is, right? Protein comes from amino acids, because that's kind of what perfect aminos are. They are amino acids, but they also form enzymes that facilitate chemical reactions in our body, right? So if we don't have protein, if we don't have amino acids, we're going to be enzymatically deficient. So a lot of the processes in our body aren't going to work, right? We're not going to function. And let's talk a little bit about that. So like detoxification, energy production, repair, growth, like what do amino acids offer us?
Well, before we go there, let's back up because
Yeah.
you painted a brilliant picture, and we're going to elaborate on it. So you have proteins, then you have peptides, then you have amino acids. We can relate this to just protein, and that's very like
surface level or
theoretical. Well, no, it's theoretical to a lot of people. When you're thinking about protein, you have people that understand it to a level of microbes, but the majority of normal human beings relate it to, you know, the number that's on whatever package is at the store, like the cookies that say they're
20 grams or not.
Protein.
Yep.
Yeah. Protein it should be related back to the WHO, the Nutritional Board, the International Nutrition Boards, the USDA, of what they consider complete protein, which is animal product. Believe it. I mean, plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only identified complete protein by itself. As a benchmark, animal products are roughly 2/3 carbon waste in non-protein material, non-amino acid material, and 1/3 usable amino acid material. So,
which I never knew that. I didn't realize that, like when I started learning about literally these products, because you're saying, so if you go and you eat meat, your body can literally only use 1/3 of that protein. Or like if you're saying if the protein cookie says it's 20 grams, that doesn't really mean your body's going to get 20 grams from that protein. You're saying only 1/3 of that is actually usable. That for me was a big aha moment. I just wanted to clarify that for the listener, because we just assume 20 grams is 20 grams. Like we don't know that.
Yeah. So from a grocery store shopping, figuring out your lifestyle standpoint, meat protein is complete protein, and all identification of protein should be there as a benchmark, right? That's your stable number, excuse me. When you see it on supplement products and proteins, pea isolate protein, soy protein, spirulina protein, whatever, pumpkin seed, that is a supplemental protein that best case scenario is half the utilization of meat protein, right? It's a supplement. If it was as good as it would replace, make no mistake about it, no country on the planet would say, yes, this inferior thing that we can manufacture at will out of this inexpensive product is better for humanity than, you know, what food protein is. No one in the country believes that, and it just kind of becomes an unsaid thing that supplemental protein is an inferior protein to food.
Sure.
Right? So, but that's what you see advertised and marketed and put on packages. Right? Milk and anything that can get away with it legally says it and puts a number there. It doesn't count as protein unless you count it by half of what it says. Peptides are incomplete proteins. So this is the same category as vegetables. It's like when somebody's eating brown rice for protein or quinoa or whatever, you have to mix and match and be intelligent enough to know what's missing out of A, and I need to add B, right? Otherwise, it's not a complete protein. It's a lot of waste, and you end up kind of balancing this act of looking thicker than you should be, even though you don't eat meat and you think you eat healthy, right? Because your balance is wrong. And you're taking in a lot of carbohydrates that you're counting as protein. Peptides can also be things like collagen and collagen products.
Yes, go there. Yes.
So protein supplements are a complete profile. It's just an inferior profile to meat. Collagen or bone broth is an incomplete protein. It can't even call itself a protein supplement. It calls itself a whole other category, which really means it's, well, lacking an essential amino acid, according to everyone.
So it's not complete because it doesn't have all the amino acids, or why is it? Okay.
Have the ones that our human body needs.
Okay.
Like a cow doesn't have tryptophan in its collagen. A chicken doesn't have tryptophan in its collagen. A fish doesn't have tryptophan in its collagen. A human being does. You can mix and match and change collagens however you want to. It doesn't magically make that missing essential amino acid appear. And that missing essential amino acid becomes the benchmark for when the body stops using it. It's called a limiting factor in biology, human biology. Limiting factor 0 by itself, outside of adding other things to it, it is almost completely sugar and fat. It cannot be a protein. You're not going to make collagen by eating it. It's a little element, but that's what a peptide is. right? It is an incomplete structure from protein. It is a smaller protein strand. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yes. I just want to clarify this for the listeners because this was kind of hard for me to understand too. So essentially, you're saying if even one of the essential amino acids is not present, then the body is not utilizing that food or supplement or whatever
Yeah.
to make. Well,
There,
yeah.
yeah. So there's all macros, carbohydrates have a storage system in the body. Fat has a storage system in the body. Vitamin B can be stored in the liver for up to 6 months. Magnesium can be stored. Copper can be stored. All of the minerals and vitamins and nutrients in the body have a storage system. Most of them have a storage system. There is no storage system for amino acids. If it is not used within the generally considered half-life is 2 to 3 hours, depending on metabolism. If it's not used in 2 to 3 hours, the nitrogen's removed, it goes through urea, and you're left with a carbohydrate that then there's a storage system for, right? So the limiting factor says, imagine building a necklace, okay? Like we're going to build a beaded necklace and we've got a box full of beads and we have a blueprint of what this necklace needs to look like. And it has 9, 10 different bead colors on it. If you run out of one of those bead colors, that necklace can't be made. And we can't sit it inside to the side and decide that this is a half-made necklace, and when we get more, we'll make it. That necklace is ripped apart and used to make something else, or you never even try to make it. Like with the case with collagen, you never have all of the ingredients by itself to make that necklace. You are missing it at an essential element to it, right? Even though it's not as prolific as lysine is or isoleucine is, which are the valine, those are the BCAAs are the ones that everybody thinks we need the most of.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's the most doesn't mean the necklace can be completed.
Well, and let's go there because some patients say, well, I'll just take branched chain amino acids. But the argument to that is the same as collagen. Those both would not be complete.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens then? So if we become protein deficient, if we're not getting the complete profile, what does protein deficiency or maybe protein malnourishment, as he calls it in his book, lead to?
Long-term effects, old age.
Sure. In short, old age.
Yeah. All of the, and I mean that like symptomatically, like what are the symptoms of old? That is your symptoms of protein deficiency on best case scenario, right? Your skin gets thin, you get osteopenia as your bones lose density, your muscles get weak, you lose the flexibility to get up. Like Dr. Minkoff's goal, speaking of him, one of the things that resonated with me most in working with other doctors that are his age, I do the things I do so that I can bend down, get down with my grandkids and get up on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Like that's my goal.
Yep.
That's not doing that as a protein deficiency and long-term neglect on the body and making yourself smaller, right? From a capability standpoint.
Sure. So basically you age faster if you're protein deficient. So I'm going to add weakness, fatigue. You had said, I think you said hair loss. You said muscle wasting, even gastrointestinal issues, poor healing, memory loss, mental health issues. You said bone loss. And then, of course, the premature aging and chronic disease in general.
I think all of those are premature aging.
Yeah. I mean, in his book, Search for the Perfect Amino, Dr. Minkoff says all depressed patients or all anxious patients are protein malnourished. All osteoporotic patients are malnourished. All cancer patients are protein malnourished. All autoimmune patients, all patients with sleep disorders, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's are all protein malnourished. So we got to talk about the solution here to this protein malnourishment. So
it's, our society is backwards. Our society is very highly focused on plant-based proteins, and even here at Body Health and at LifeWorks, I'm sure there's people that haven't eaten meat in years, and there's vegans and vegetarians, and we've been morally challenged with it, right? Like it's the best way to win. Battles have been created over far less. Wars have been created over far less than the needless slaughter of innocents. But that's the picture that's been painted.
Sure.
Right. lifestyle wise, having a moral compass to not eating meat makes sense. Like it totally does. Unfortunately, the challenge is on our planet, there's not a better option. Eating artificially created meat means you're eating an industrial waste product that was made in a giant laboratory that displaced God knows how many acres of land and is completely chemical derived. There's nothing about that is natural and makes sense. And the same can be placed with mono agriculture. There's actually, I was listening to Joe Rogan, which I don't do often, but
I do.
I had to listen to that Joe Rogan Donald Trump episode. I
just
to check
started it. Yes, me too. Yep.
Well, there's a point in there where Rogan and they're discussing the food crisis and the health crisis.
Yep.
And one of the biggest problems for the medical crisis we have is mono-agricultural food. But we've created the society to where you have Los Angeles or New York, no one grows their own food. Everything has to be shipped in.
Sure.
It is expensive, and there's not a way to manage that lifestyle in a natural way. It has to be industrialized. So you end up with pockets of people who have to eat terrible food because they don't have a choice if they live where they live. There's not an option, right? That's food deserts or whatever. Like they're eating the cheapest, most mass manufactured stuff on the planet.
Sure.
And it was a hit home moment that, he got to say that in front of a potential president, because it's like, there it is.
Problem. Here's the, yeah.
Yeah. How do we get around that? Like, you just have to decide that the path that we're going in, we're spending billions of dollars on avocado and agave farms to support this lifestyle. Well, like it is the number two rainforest clearing actions right now are to produce avocado and agave fields. How does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, over my head, the problem is so large. Yes,
if all of us, but that's the challenge, right?
Yeah,
we don't know. So I went off on a tangent.
That's all right. No, there's an avocado documentary that talks about that too, but we won't go that direction. We'll come back to from an easier, not short-term solution, of course, back to the topic of this podcast, is that we can supplement. So I want to get into like perfect aminos and kind of what they are. We've kind of talked a little bit about why proteins aren't created equal, but I know when I was learning about perfect aminos from you, you talked about bioavailability and absorption and utilization. So I want to go in and digestibility too. So tell us, maybe we'll just cut to the chase. What are perfect aminos? Like, what is this supplement? Why is it perfect? What makes it perfect? And then we'll talk a little bit about absorption and utilization, and I'll come back to all those, help guide you, because I just mentioned a lot, but what are perfect aminos?
Okay. So in essence, perfect aminos it's an amino acid complex that uses nucleotides and nucleosides to help leverage its usefulness in older patients. And the science of it is what makes it perfect, right? So we understand and have known, like I've seen studies dating back to the 1950s that prove, certain amino acids are not needed to reach what's called a nitrogen balance in the body, right? To have adequate amino acids at all times you can eliminate things that today are actively and often considered essential. And it's just based on false datum. So that's 70 years back. It's just obfuscated. Perfect amino operates off of the ratio that the human body requires to never run out of use, never have a limiting factor. So the limiting factor I had mentioned that exists with collagen, it's true with all proteins. It is one of the three leverages that make protein good or bad. Perfect amino has no limiting factor. As long as you're taking it and the ratios are staying intact, you don't see insulin spike, you don't see nitrogen increase in the urea. It's perfect, right? Which is a profound thing to say, that like I myself have been doing urine tests, running a live glucose monitor, and have taken as much as 70 grams at one time.
Of the perfect amino. Yeah.
Of the perfect amino. And at the time, the research said 30 grams is max. No human being can use more than 30 grams at one time. And that was like this little caveat of a thing that was said. It wasn't based on any validated fact. It was just, kind of a marketing thing. Like, don't worry, you don't need more than 30 in a day, which is a very different thing because it's a pocketbook consideration, not a science consideration.
Sure.
So at 70 grams, my blood sugar stays down. It drops when you take a big dose. You'll see your blood sugar drop, as much as 10 points for about 2 to 3 hours. And the idea there kind of falls in line with the theory that your body is using ATP, it's using energy, and it's not actually getting a surplus, right? Like you're actively creating new proteins. So there's an energy draw there. Blood sugar is taken. See it go down 5 to 10 points. You have no, in a fasted state, you've got almost virtually no nitrogen output.
Which is important because nitrogen, so that's what's hard on the kidneys, right? So like that's what I tell patients, the perfect aminos are essentially like getting protein without any calories and without the nitrogen waste, which is hard on the kidneys. So even patients on dialysis, patients with kidney issues actually can benefit from perfect aminos too. And that's a little bit of a tangent, but just wanted to throw that in there. Yeah.
And it is the only qualifiable benchmark we have, like how much nitrogen can go in versus how much can go out. We've known amino acid compositions of virtually every protein. We know how to figure that out. It's stable data for like 70 years. In that, we can say, you're going to eat this in a fasted state. We'll check your nitrogen levels through your urine, and we'll check this over a 3 to 5 hour period, and we'll see what happens. We can look at the output of that nitrogen in the urea, and we know how much percentage-wise stayed in the body, assumably being used to make new protein. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so let me go back though to bioavailability. So what exactly is that?
So bioavailability is a term that has a meaning. It's very specific. In the protein industry, it's used to say, look how good we are, right? Bioavailability assumes that it means I'm making new protein in the body when I take this, and this is used to make new protein. Sure. But all bioavailability actually refers to is the organism that food stuff is going into can be recognized and converted to something else. So to be bioavailable, you can convert from one compound to another. Or break it down and rebuild.
Yep.
Sugar is completely bioavailable, 100%. So we can take it and convert it to glucose, right? But when we say protein is bioavailable, what are we actually claiming, right? Because that's what it means. It means it can be converted. The body can take it. It can convert it to waste. It can convert it to sugar. It can convert it to fat. It can convert it to protein.
Is that back to the, half of or a third of what you eat that we were talking about? If you have a steak, is that back to like a third is bioavailable?
No, that
or am I interchanging terms?
Like, yes. No, that's correct.
Okay.
Well, no. So in meat, it's all bioavailable, right?
Okay.
Meat's bioavailable.
Okay.
Fiber is not bioavailable, right? Bone structure isn't bioavailable, usually without boiling it down, turning it into a broken down form. But in it as its whole, it's something that if it's being digested, it's being converted, right? Because it's being broken down into something.
Sure.
Fiber, not bioavailable. When we eat fiber or prebiotics, we are literally eating something that our body can do nothing with. Physically, like our body isn't ourselves. Organisms can eat prebiotics, sure, right? And that's the goal, is for them to ferment by being eaten by the apples, right? So
okay, so let's go back to maybe like digestibility then. So what's the strength in perfect aminos? Is that like already digested, or what's the deal with, digesting perfect aminos versus digesting protein from a steak?
So the goal of digesting a steak is to get to amino acids, right? Okay. So you're taking long strain protein fibers, breaking them down to peptides, and then further breaking them down to amino acids. Then they can be used, right? These are an amino acid's a free form, L-amino acid is in its usable state. There's nothing else to be done, right? So organisms aren't going to eat that to take something away from it. it's at its smallest form. So when something's needs to be digested, that's the goal. The ability or the percentage of digestibility rather is going to dictate how good or bad that protein is if we're referring to protein. So that's highly digestible is an important thing. But what it can be broken down into is the next question, right? And that's when you get into composition, which is the third lever, and that's where you have limiting factors.
Sure.
So,
let me go back to digestibility. So if someone has food sensitivities or they're on reflux medications, like a lot of things can compromise our ability to digest and break down that protein. Okay, but then you go to the next step. Okay, go to the next step.
So in an element with that, just to kind of drive it home, if you have compromised digestibility, proteins that might be 32% for like meat protein might be 32% for somebody who has quality amino acid structures, right? Quality digestive enzyme structures. Someone who's been protein deficient for an extended period of time ends up in a position to where eating meat is going to make their life not as fun, right? Their body, it's going to make them feel weighed down or heavy or nauseous or sick because their body can't do anything
digest.
with it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Which is something that I've seen in my family personally with vegans and vegetarians that are in my circle. They will go years without eating meat, and they refer back to that time they tried to go back to eating meat and it made them sick. Yeah, you don't have the ability to digest something because you haven't done it. You haven't had the ability, right? And you end up in a snake eating its tail is the concept, the visualization. Like there is no, the beginning point is the end point now. Like you're stuck in a cycle. So
unfortunately,
anyway.
yeah. Okay, go to composition. You were next going to talk about composition, I think.
So composition, composition is, and we've touched on this, like composition is based on the quantity of each amino acid structure. We know what perfect looks like. We've known what perfect looks like for 70 years.
Can you list all those amino acids that are the essential?
Well, so the essential amino acids. So let's see. You've got the branched chain amino acids: leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Then you have phenylalanine, methionine, tryptophan, lysine.
I should have some perfect aminos in my office here. Let me grab them.
I'm sure I do too. Hold on.
Threonine. I think we're missing
threonine. That's what I missed is threonine.
For the listeners here, perfect aminos. Yeah, good job though. Got a lot of those. Okay.
Yeah, off the top of my head. It's fun. Just don't ask me to list the nucleotides and nucleosides. Those words are they won't stick in my head.
I won't. So the way that the perfect aminos are created, I know you were alluding to earlier that like plant-based protein is just not, I don't say natural. Of course it's natural, but it's inferior to animal-based protein. But for patients who choose to not eat meat, they actually could do the perfect aminos because these are based on
they're built off plant-based.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just to be clear. Yep.
So, and actually, if we can, I want to show you something. I'm going to back you off for just a second, because this is going into composition, and this is a very, very key element for so many people visually. Amino acid comparisons. Can we share our screen? Yes, we can. I know we can. Bear with me. Share. So visually, and I'm sorry for those that are listening and not looking. Here we have every commercially available protein source that I was able to, find, like if able to think of, honestly, like if there's others that anyone can think of that aren't on this list that are, commercially available proteins, I'll be glad to go on and pull up the amino acid compositions. But every one of these products has had numerous amino acid composition profiles ran on them over the years. And we break them down. Why is
So for the
That's not
listener,
supposed to
he
say.
has whey, tofu, spirulina, pea isolate, brown rice, chickpea, pumpkin, hemp, like listed on this spreadsheet here.
Yes. Yeah, and it's actually, you know
And
what? I've
lots
got a
more. But yeah.
horizontal, I've got a vertical version that's a little bit easier to read. This one I was playing with, unfortunately. Where is? Everything's rearranged while I'm on my laptop and not at my desk at my office. Here we go. See, this one needs to be closed. Apologies for the delay, but we can edit that, right?
Yeah, we can. Absolutely.
Getting presentations. Dang it, it did it to me again. Here we go. There. Okay. So this is the same data laid out different. This is the original layout of it. Max reference points. So all of this has been figured out beyond reproach. So what I did, so when you look at a composition, it's done on 1,000 grams. And we've taken every composition that we could find on a specific product, like whey. There's like 5 or 6 different compositions that are readily available to find. And you take the highest number, highest value of every single essential amino acid. So you end up with a number that's unobtainable because it's literally only taking the best amino acids that have ever been tested, regardless of test, right? Your total composition, non-anabolic material, which is, again, going to the stuff that isn't what your body's looking for. It's the stuff that your body has to digest, break down, and convert to something else to be thrown away or stored for later. This is all the threonine, valine, methionine, tryptophan. This is what your body wants. It's what your body's looking for. Nothing else really matters. Not everything else can be take it or leave it, right? You don't need it. You don't need to eat it for food. It's not why we buy food. Look at the percentage of non-anabolic material. Lentils, which are common vegetarian proteins, 95.66% non-anabolic material.
So does that mean catabolic if it's non-anabolic?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. That means your body has to break it down and get rid of it to access the 4.5% of protein structure that it can use.
It seems like a lot of
Right.
work. Yeah.
What the funny thing is it requires enzymes, which are a protein cost,
Right.
to be used
To do that.
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it requires enzymes in your liver to actually handle that processing and make sure nothing stays toxic. It has an absolute cost to do it. It's a negative food product. Like, you end up eating it and it costs you protein that you would have had if you just didn't eat it. Like,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
a backwards idea. But
Okay.
that
That's
being
lentils.
said,
Yeah. Tell me about whey
that's
and
lentils.
yeah.
So, well, hold on, before we go on from lentils, like,
Yeah.
notice that lentils does have, albeit very little, it has some tryptophan.
Yep.
So if you eat a product that doesn't have tryptophan and you have lentils, you increase the usability. It's not an ideal situation, but
Sure.
going through as a vegan who's relying on plants for protein, you have to know what you have to eat together to achieve protein. So it's not a bad thing, but in our culture today, like, people eat one thing, or they don't pay a lot of attention, or they go out to eat. And anyway, so whey, it's still the same thing. Like, if whey is 100% utilized, which it's not, but that's the way they portray it to be, saying like 100% bioavailable. That's the idea. It's still only 40% possibly used for amino acid structures and protein growth. So if it's 100% utilized, it's still 60% waste. So once we get through that complete digestibility and bioavailability breakdown, now we're left with 40% anabolic material. Now composition becomes a factor. And through composition, you end up reducing roughly half of that. So depending on the digestibility in the person and the specific quantity, we're at between 15 to 20% usable amino acids, which is in line with supplemental protein.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And it looks like
P isolate.
Very similar, it looks like here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like anyone that says one's better than the other is.
And spirulina also is on here. It's very similar as well. Soy is super low. I'm actually shocked to see that.
And that's soybean, right? But if you actually go to tofu curd is back up to around 40%. Interesting.
Yes.
So,
but still so much lower. So then, okay, let's compare this then to Perfect Aminos.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have, what is it, like 98% digestibility, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know it's high.
Well, it's already digested. It's already digested. So we're looking at 99%, up to 99% usability, whatever the legal terminology is. Can be, yeah. But it is up to 99%. Like I've seen literally no nitrogen waste come out off of monstrous doses.
Sure.
Doses that no human being would do on a regular basis or ever probably. So yeah, that is using the same factors. Perfect Aminos 99% anabolic material, right? Like,
so again, think of that as usability. I mean, just for the listener, again, this is kind of over their head. So I'm like, okay, anabolic meaning what your body's going to use to build something in your body.
That's right.
Which again,
that's all that matters.
Yeah. And so I'm going to go off on another tangent here. So it's my understanding that pending what's going on in your body's going to triage where those amino acids are used, right? So let's say you just had a surgery, you had a burn or something, right? Your body's going to prioritize from a healing standpoint where those amino acids are used.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Correct. So you want to make sure you're not protein deficient or your body's going to pull from. I mean,
and honestly, with like physical damage, and repairing soft tissue or bone or collagens, cartilages, Perfect Amino itself is fully anabolic. There is studies that, and I feel obligated to just reference this as a point. There are studies that try to make arginine out to be an essential amino acid based on a proven increase of healing factor by up to 30% when arginine is taken to wounded individuals. So because of that, it has been falsely labeled as a essential amino acid, when in really the study says, hey, if you take this supplement during this time, it helps, like, which is exactly what all supplements really do. But marketing does its thing in research as well. So if you have physical damage, taking a dosage of Perfect Amino, equal to your body weight and including 500 milligrams of arginine is likely to increase the recovery rate by up to 30% of that tissue. So just a
fun fact. Sure. So, and I do want to go back and just to say there are 22 amino acids that our body uses to make protein. 8 of them are essential, meaning we must get them from food. So those 8, again, I'm going to repeat that we had mentioned: the leucine, valine, isoleucine, lysine, phenylalanine, threonine, methionine, and tryptophan. So that's what's in Perfect Aminos, which again is essentially 99% utilized. So, and fully absorbed within about 20-30 minutes, right? The research shows that very easily digested, even in patient or utilized, I guess that's what I should say. Yes, 99% utilized, even in a compromised gut situation. And it's 100% vegan, non-GMO, right? So let's go back to dosing though. So you had kind of mentioned you've taken really high dose. So let's talk about dosing. And that I do want to talk about some specific uses and even if there are any potential side effects. So what's the typical dosage? How would a listener take this?
So general rule of thumb is we want 30 minutes after waking, 30 minutes before sleep, within 30 minutes of those 2 time frames.
Okay.
Your circadian rhythm will do different things based on its resources at those times.
Sure.
Right. And it'll also do different things if you take it midday after you've broken your fast and you've eaten a meal. All of those points have different considerations for a circadian rhythm.
But this also doesn't break a fast, right? Because there's no carbs in it. So just FYI. Okay. For someone who is intermittent fasting, you could still take this in the morning. Okay. Back to you.
Yeah. So, as a basic rule of thumb in our clinic, to keep things simple, we'll suggest, either you stick to one serving per 50 pounds of body weight. So that'll be either one scoop or 5 tablets.
Yep.
And you separate between those 2 times, or you get a little, less micro with it and just do 2 servings in the morning and 2 servings before bed. It's the majority of people. That's what works. If you take any more, there's no downside. It'll affect your pocketbook, but generally people feel better. I do 6 to 7 scoops a day.
Wow. Well, I guess another conversation to have is how much do we need? Like, what are our body's requirements for amino acids every day?
So Ron Lehman is a guru on protein. He's a brilliant man. I have heard him reference, and I tend to listen to what he says about protein, but I have heard him reference that regardless of age and diet, or age in status, right? In life, we're going to use 300 grams of protein per day. Our body will use that whether we're eating it or not.
Protein or amino acids? Like we
Amino
need 30
acids.
grams. Okay.
300
Okay.
grams.
Okay.
So we will use 300 grams of amino acids whether we eat or not. But there's a lot to that, like metabolism, cleaning of cells. Like there's a lot of structural and enzyme things that doesn't mean you eat 300 grams of protein a day. Regardless, I believe that you either want to achieve 1 gram per pound of body weight or meet a halfway point and be at 150 grams of protein intake a day. So, and kind of that way you are always ensuring your metabolism is doing what it needs to do, right? And you're recycling protein structures, because we don't want to shut down the need for the body to actually clean itself, which I fear that's what will happen if you think that you need to eat 300 grams of protein a day.
Sure. So let's give an example for the audience. So for an average female listener who might be 150 pounds, we're essentially saying she needs 150 grams of amino acids. Yeah. Or yeah.
Of protein. We'll use the
protein.
word protein.
Protein. Okay.
And yeah. Eat that and count that, again, only food that you eat, right? If you go back to the very beginning of our conversation, everything should be based off of meat quality protein. If you're counting supplements, it is half the quality. It should be halved in the number.
Sure.
Right. So.
But Perfect Aminos, as mentioned on the label here. So you mentioned the tablets and the powder. So just again to clarify for the listeners, because we're kind of talking all over the place. I know this is dense. 1 serving, which has again these 8 essential amino acids, is 5 tablets or 1 scoop of powder, which is essentially equivalent to 29 grams of whey, 15 grams of meat, or 10 gram from eggs. So I just wanted, again, like paint the picture for a listener. If she's trying to get 150 grams of protein, which is a great goal. I don't think many of my patients get that, but let's say that's our goal, because that's what we need. We're saying so for our body to not break down, for us to age well, whatnot. This is where we want them to get to. I want to give 2 scenarios. So one scenario is they're getting 100 grams of protein from food, which I still think most of my patients are not getting. But let's say they get 100 grams from food. They could make up 50 grams with Perfect Aminos.
Yeah.
Right.
So Perfect Amino, you want to make 3 to 1, right? So 1 gram of Perfect Amino equals 3 grams of protein. It's the same math as 99% utilized, 32% utilized, right? It's a 3 to 1 ratio. So if you want to replace food protein or fill the delta is really what I suggest. I suggest, if you're eating a quarter pound of meat is roughly 40 grams of protein. So if you have, a quarter pound piece of chicken on a salad for lunch, and then you have a quarter pound steak or fish for dinner, you've had 80 grams of protein that day. That's usually where people end.
Sure.
And so if we're lucky, they have eggs in the morning or add eggs for their salad, and they can count another 10 or 20 grams. So we can say maybe 100 grams a day.
Okay.
Now you're at 50 gram delta.
Yes.
It's pretty standard. So 3 to 1. If you want 1 tablet, it's 3 grams of protein. Fill your gap to whatever your weight is. Okay. You can then, after a couple of days of doing this, you'll have an idea of what you need to be.
I never thought of it that way. You said 1 tablet is equivalent to like 3 grams. I was just thinking, what is 5 tablets equivalent to? But you're saying 1 to 3.
One is 15, or one scoop or 5 tablets is 15 grams. So it's really, you can get as micro or as yeah.
So they would need 3 servings of this per
Mhm.
day to get roughly the 45 or 50 remaining grams
Yeah.
of protein per day.
That's right.
And the other caveat is you don't want to take this with protein. Like you want to take this away from protein. Right?
So here's what happens. Like you'll end up, yeah, sure, if it's an ideal situation. But what I don't want people to do is become over aware of this
And then not
put
take
more.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. Though here's what'll happen. These amino acids are free form and they're ready to build. So you have the immediate rebinding of protein in the gut, and then they have to be redigested. Maybe it takes longer. Your utilization of perfect amino is no longer perfect. Let's say it goes down to 50%. That's still higher than any food that you can put in your body or supplement.
Sure.
Right? So it might not be perfect anymore, but it's still better than anything else that you can buy or use.
I get that. But what I've been starting to do, like you were saying, within 30 minutes of waking, take your first dose. Then I'll go work out, whatever, get ready, shower. And then I have breakfast later. So theoretically, then I'm getting greater benefit because I'm spacing them out.
That's right.
So that was what I would advise listeners to do. Yes. So remember that kind of 3-to-1 ratio here. Okay. So what about side effects? So should anyone be worried about side effects?
Whenever, yes, sure. Maybe not worried. That's the wrong word. Whenever you begin taking perfect amino, let's say worst case scenario, you've got leaky gut, you've got gut intestinal issues, you've been malnourished for a long period of time, even if you think you're asymptomatic. You start taking perfect amino and suddenly you're feeling bloating a couple hours after taking it, an hour after taking it, or an uneasy uncomfortableness.
Why would someone get bloated off this?
It's not this in general. So the amino acids themselves are in your blood within 30 minutes. 23 is the actual time, but we'll say 30 minutes to round it out. At that point, your body is literally, they're active and they're ready to be used to manufacture. It is not uncommon that the gut becomes a focal point of repair. And like if you eat meat, let's say you have a quarter pound of meat, you've got about a 6-hour to 7-hour window that amino acids are slowly seeping into your bloodstream as it breaks down. When you take perfect amino, let's say you're just taking the 2 servings in the morning. Within 23 minutes, you have had a pound or a half pound, it's about a half pound equivalent of meat into your bloodstream without any digestion or energy requirements or slow trickle period. It's not something human bodies have really ever experienced.
Awesome.
Right? Yeah. It is, but it is not without sensation. Like if the body says, oh my God, I have this, and we can do this cycle. So the mucosal lining in the intestines is supposed to change over every 3 days. The national average is 2 weeks. And you have compromised people and they can be literally holding together a mucosal lining that is responsible for nutrition uptake. It's responsible for keeping out parasites and pathogens and chemicals. And it's degraded and glyphosate ridden and stressed, right? Or just damaged in disrepair and needs to be replaced. When I started taking perfect amino, I passed through essentially slime within the first few days, and it was interesting. But I also had that bloating feeling, and it was just made aware, so it was never a problem for me. Something I've seen as we've grown is less people are getting that awareness when they start taking it, right? So they have that sensation or that experience, and they assume it's an intolerance. Like I shouldn't take this because I feel it.
Yeah.
So, but if you continue to take it, and honestly, if you just take more, your body will pass through that action, and it doesn't take long.
I never had any of that. Okay.
Yeah.
What about, I had noted that side effects could be kind of altering the circadian rhythm, that it could be stimulating for some. Why is that? I mean, is it building excitatory neurotransmitters or something? But yet you also said to take it before bedtime. So break that down for me.
Yeah. Well, that is a circadian rhythm base. And we don't have that pinned down to where I could say for a fact what it is, right? Because it is a random occurrence. We can't isolate it. enough
Is
to
it
go.
short-lived? Is it short-lived if someone, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is. The recommendation is generally if you take it before bed and it keeps you up that night, move that dosage up into the mid-afternoon for a few weeks and then try to bring it back down.
Got it. Okay.
Because it's your body is confused on what to do because it's not there's no stimulant there, right? So you're getting it in your body when it should be making serotonin, melatonin, and dopamine isn't.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that's generally, I mean, the people that I've seen that also tend to be on or have been on antidepressants or those kinds of medications.
Sure.
And so, I mean, really, there's innumerable reasons why their circadian rhythm might be a little out of whack.
Just in the short term. Yeah. So how long does it take
short.
patients to feel results, would you say, when they start taking something like this? I'm sure that answer depends, but how do you answer that?
It does. It does. I would say that I'll use personal reference. My mother was about 4 weeks in when she got an aha cognition, like, oh my God. I was at 72 hours and I knew that I had vital protein, vital collagen and orgain protein in my cabinet. And I looked at my wife and said, I'm never touching that again.
Yeah.
So 72 hours for me.
Wow.
And it was vastly different.
Sure.
So I would say anywhere in that range. If you don't experience something in a month, I would say you're probably not taking enough.
Sure. Yep. Good point. I want to go through some specific uses. So, I mean, you pretty much sold me on why we absolutely need this. We are, most of us, protein deficient, but athletes. So we can just break down some specific benefits. So athletes, why would athletes need this?
I mean, the athletes that I know that are personally taking it, like the actual professional ones. A friend of mine, I danger to call him friend. A gentleman I know that I work with, he's fairly new to Perfect Amino. When he started taking Perfect Amino, he had a terrible leg injury and was done for his season. When he started the next off season, he was number one in scoring. He was number one in assists, and it was a femur break. It is I'm gone for 18 months minimum.
Wow.
And he was on obviously doing a lot of things. Perfect Amino was just one of the things that his physicians added to his regimen, but they added to it it was a rate of like 60 or 90 grams a day. And he was on that for 3 months, and he was better than he had been in years. His weight was down. He was toned, leaner, faster, and recovered from an 18-month injury in an off season.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like, I mean, given he's a hockey player, and that's crazy, they're not the same breed of us as normal people, but generally speaking, athletes like that believe that being in pain all the time and having delayed onset soreness is just a way of life. It is their job. It's the way they are all the time. I use that with those athletes as a guide to how much Perfect Amino do you need, because delayed onset soreness shouldn't be a factor. Like, if you're bruised, that's one thing. If your body's physically damaged, that's one thing. If you're working out and you think you should be sore for the rest of the week, you're protein deficient. Like, it's that simple.
And don't we lose? Didn't you say at one point, like in 1 hour of sweating, you lose a couple grams of amino acids?
Yeah. So there's 2 different studies out. You lose 2 grams to 4 grams of essential amino acids every hour you sweat through your skin. So
for many patients, we're recommending, obviously, when they're sweating, if they're sitting in a sauna, whatnot, to replace electrolytes. But you guys have an electrolyte Perfect Amino blend also that doesn't, it's not as high potency as the tablets or the other powder we're talking about, but it's a 2 gram replacement to sweating, plus it has electrolytes. And the orange tastes pretty good too. So
I like the citrus a lot.
Yeah. I guess I was assuming with sweating, I'm sweating out electrolytes, like, sweat tastes like salt, right? I wasn't thinking I'm losing amino acids, but you are.
Yeah. So, it's funny. Dr. Minkoff had that belief. Those studies came out in 2022, I believe. There's 2 different ones that came out with very similar results. He started making those electrolytes in 2019 because he had been doing salt and Perfect Amino for years.
Yeah.
And Yeah. And it's like, no, it makes sense
To
that we're
combine them
doing
totally.
that. Yeah.
Totally,
And
totally.
the studies came out and it was, I don't even know if he gloated at all about it, but he was certainly deserved it. So,
Let me go to
mhm,
sleep, back to another use. So
mhm.
why were you saying that it should be taken within 30 minutes of going to sleep? Is that just because we repair at night when we're at rest, or what's the strategy behind that?
That is the circadian rhythm point, is repair when you're sleeping, right? Repair and rebuild are the amino acids that are required to make dopamine, serotonin, 5-HTP. Those are all essential amino acids. Um, our body is looking for them when we sleep, which is why when we eat, we fast for 3 hours, we start getting that seepage of amino acids into our system that helps us go to sleep. And then while we sleep, amino acids continue to be digested and released into the blood, right? So that helps our repair of our body. Our body, when an athlete takes a protein, a perfect amino or something, pre or post workout, our body isn't repairing or rebuilding muscle while we're working out. There's different functions that happen. Building of muscle happens while you sleep. Repairing of tissue happens while you sleep. It is when our most abundant amino acid requirements are present.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
What about weight loss?
Mm-hmm.
So why do we need amino acids for weight loss? Because most of my patients are
So
wanting to lose weight. Yeah.
So protein metabolism, first off, is I don't care what study you pull up, and there are countless ones at this point. In order to lose weight, protein anabolism has to be present. You have to be making new protein in order for the body to metabolize old cells. Fat cells require energy.
Sure.
And obviously, we've seen this anecdotally through Atkins, through pretty much most diets. Understand that higher protein is required to, lose weight and get a better physique.
Sure.
That's goes without saying. With perfect amino, like most food, obviously, if you're eating food, you're eating 60% catabolic material for that protein. So perfect amino gives you that no waste, no calories, and you can still get that protein level up. Every cell or every gram of protein, every tablet you take is a gram of new cellular material. That is a gram of metabolized existing material. Because whenever we make a cell, we break down an equivalent cell. That's the natural human metabolism, right? The word metabolism relates to anabolic versus catabolic actions.
Sure. And we want to be in the not breakdown, but in the manufacturing
Yeah,
stage. Net
because
positive. Yes. Yes.
if you're net positive,
Yeah.
if you're building new proteins, you're breaking down less wanted proteins, less used proteins, right? That is the nature of it. And
Sure.
we can say we have fast metabolisms, slow metabolisms. Really, it's a matter of, are you anabolic or are you not anabolic?
Yep. Yep. And if you're not building muscle, I would say like in response to exercise, then you probably again need more protein because you're just not able to build back to that anabolic
Yeah.
stage we're going for. So then taking perfect aminos is a good idea. But actually tell me, I can't remember, is it good to take the perfect aminos right before, during, or right after exercise if someone wants to? Does it matter?
It's regardless. What you do
Okay.
want is you want to make sure if you're exercising, you finalize that exercise with calories. You want glucose, right? So, it's as useless as I'm not useless, but as inefficient as protein supplements are at doing protein, they are very efficient at providing a wide range of readily available, bioavailable nutrients in
Sure.
an easy to consume form right after a workout, right? Like if you're hardcore on whey, taking whey after a workout is great. Think pea protein, same thing, right? Like that's when you want the sugar.
Sure. Sure. I know you alluded to you're doing some research on GLP-1s, and we don't have to totally go there. We can go there a little bit if you want, but before we
Sure.
started recording, I just mentioned we do use those in some of our patients, and we've had really good results. We microdose, we do not aggressively dose those, but we've had some patients
Mhm.
who they just can't seem to lose weight, and the GLP-1s for many patients break that plateau and help them. But I wanted for patients or listeners, just to remind them that as you lose weight, you many times are losing muscle, not just fat. And so we want to make sure for those patients who are on those sort of weight loss programs that they absolutely supplement with Perfect Amino. And we're advising them that obviously they'd be on a high protein diet, that they're very strategic. They're usually eating less, so they need to be strategic with what calories they're putting in their body. But Perfect Aminos is a great supplement for patients who are on the GLP-1s. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that or, yeah.
I was going to ask you, how many of your patients on GLP-1s are also taking Perfect Amino?
I think a decent amount of them. And we do in-body scans so we can see the fat and the muscle mass before starting them. And then we have them continue to do the in-body through the weight loss. So especially, I mean, we recommend them to most patients, but especially if we're seeing muscle loss, then we're definitely going to say you need to supplement.
Perfect Amino.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. From everything, I mean, I don't know. I think it's become GLP-1 systems have become so popular, whether it be through Ozempic or even natural brands that are coming out with systems that are just designed to accelerate GLP-1. It's not without risks, and the majority of that risk is protein wasting.
Yep.
Or counterbalancing and then gaining it all after. Having Perfect Amino, like I had this conversation with an Amish gentleman today who's being courted by a company trying to sell them on GLP-1s. If you just put them on Perfect Amino or multi-complete and either our Omega or Organ Plus, like just hit them with those basics, make sure they're getting magnesium as well. It's a natural GLP-1 product is great. Microdosing is great. Ozempic as a brand, they outwardly recommend that you never get off of it, and anything that warns you never to stop taking a product, I'm gonna wait and see. Jury's out on that one.
Sure.
But yeah, keep them on the basics, and you'll handle most of the considerations and concerns that have come as negatives through research.
Sure. We've talked about a lot. I do want to hit 3 more benefits just because I think this is so important. One is immune health. And we kind of have mentioned a little bit about intestinal permeability on this show, but I mean, on this episode, but we talked a lot about it on past episodes. So if we know the majority of our immune system lies in our gut, we certainly want to have a healthy gut. And so Perfect Aminos can help seal that intestinal membrane, right? To help keep that intact and thus can help with our immune system. Do you want to elaborate on that? Just how Perfect Aminos help support the immune system or the gut lining or any of that? I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
Okay. Yeah, no, Perfect Amino by itself does a great job at a lot of things, and it will help, the body go through its own cycles of replacing the mucosal lining. Doesn't help protect the mucosal lining.
Sure.
We make a product called Gut Restore, which is a colostrum-based immunoglobulin. It is humic acid. It is incredible. Its entire purpose is to repair that system and protect that system.
Sure.
Honestly, I think it's the best product we've made other than Multi and Perfect Amino, if I'm being candid about it. But
sure.
At Perfect Amino as itself, like when you're taking that on a regular basis, your body's own rhythm will handle things like that, and it's no longer really a big consideration. We're in a toxic world. Glyphosates, herbicides, pesticides, forever chemicals are forever going to be in our intestinal system, right? So having something there that's going to ensure that we're never at a point to where that starts getting delayed in its repair and regrowth, it's good. It's great. It's wonderful. It's never mind.
That's okay. All right. I want to talk about bone health and brain health. So we've alluded to a little bit of why Perfect Aminos are better than just plain collagen, but a lot of patients do take collagen for hair, skin, nails, bones, whatnot. So how are Perfect Aminos important for osteoporotic patients?
It is literally what it's made out of: bone, skin, hair, nails, soft tissue, hard tissue. It is not to beat a horse to death, but it is everything that you need amino acid wise, which is the hardest part of protein to get without compromise.
Sure.
I think there might be 1 or 2 companies around in collagen that have openly understood their shortcomings and added tryptophan to the product. Those products, great. I mean, it's a wonderful alternative. You've now made it an actual protein supplement. Everyone else, you're literally spending money on a marketing strategy that is designed to take a product that was biological waste, the EPA illegalized disposal of. And the only way that we could manage that from a corporate structure is getting our largest outlet to consume it. You have bought into the idea of eating biological waste is good for you.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah. So whey protein's in the same category. It's whey protein did it first. But with the EPA legalized dumping biological waste from agricultural facilities, what do you think they legalized? Whey protein was a waste product. Collagen is the cutting room floor of a butchery, sorry to say.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. Yeah. Yikes. Okay. Let me go back to, I think you once told me the skeletal muscle system, like rebuilding that, because we're constantly breaking down and building new bones and muscles for that, I guess, sense. So for someone who has osteoporosis, who starts taking Perfect Aminos, how long is it going to take them to really see benefit? I mean, it could take them like a year, couldn't it?
Yeah, it depends on perception of benefit. Like you can take a lot of calcium and get an X-ray that shows that your bones are actually hard. But it's a trick to the X-ray, right? You're not actually creating denser bones. You're just fooling an X-ray. There's a lovely lady that I work with in California. She's 79 years old and has been taking Perfect Amino for 25 or 28 years now. She takes 30 a day, has for that entire time. Yeah, she's a firecracker. When she started taking it, she had osteoporosis, and she said she knew that it was in remission within 6 months. Wow. And now today she doesn't have it. I don't know if that's a special case. Sure. I can't speak to it.
Well, it's hard to know what dose each osteoporotic patient would really need. She's on I mean, that's a pretty high dose. That's 60 days a lot. Yep.
Yeah. And she's a little girl. I think she weighs about $110. So last time I saw her, I couldn't imagine her weighing more than that.
Okay. Last major benefit I want to discuss is brain health. So why do we need amino acids for brain health?
I mean, other than
duh, but like,
I mean, it's kind of a duh. Again, like you mentioned GLP-1, our body's manufacturing of that is amino acid dependent. As is its counter hormones that makes you hungry. It's also amino acid dependent. Everything in your neurological system is amino acids. Once again, if you take the water and you take the fat away, that's all you're left with. Right. So, and when you're figuring out what something like this does, it doesn't do anything, right? Perfect Amino doesn't do anything itself. It just gives your body the most commonly missing thing in the most abundance. It gives it to you readily available for you to do with it whatever your own checklist. Yeah.
It is, yes. Back to that triage, yes.
Yeah, and it's triage is a perfect example, explanation of it. And I always refer to it as a running list, and you have this many things and you have this much protein intake, and it's just going to continue taking the worst to best case scenario, and everything down here eventually comes up or it doesn't. Sure. Right. And so it helps with that.
I mean, if you're listening and you have anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD, if your kids do, right? I mean, your brain uses 20% of the energy of your entire body. So like, we want to make sure we're fueling, not just your bones, what we were just talking about your brain too. We want to make sure you're not protein malnourished. So taking Perfect Aminos can really help in those situations as well. And I recently was, as all my listeners know, was pregnant. And I wanted to know right away, well, can I keep taking Perfect Aminos while I'm pregnant? Yes. The answer is yes. And through lactation, yes, because my demands have gone up. So I should be taking more actually in those situations. And I've lost so much muscle mass since I wasn't exercising as much. So I'm trying to maintain and gain muscle mass. So another reason why I need more of the Perfect Aminos at this point in my life. All right.
Include magnesium. Include
Oh, I
magnesium.
take that every day.
And
Yeah.
yes, like
Every night.
it
Yeah.
is the most neglected element, I think, and from Perfect Amino users as a whole.
Sure.
Either that or they just never talk about it, right? Like, which is also possible. But yeah, like if you don't use, like, our calm is it's good. It's very good. It'll do the job. It does it very well for a low dollar input, but every day.
Sure.
It's all of your muscle, your rebuilding, your bone density, like everything that you're worried about taking protein for requires magnesium. So yeah.
Yeah, so you need that too. Yay. Okay. Well, I think we've listed lots of benefits: muscle mass recovery, bone density, hair, skin, nails, healing the gut, laxity, and skin, memory, immune support, and ultimately to prevent chronic disease. We're made out of amino acids. Is there anything we missed? Anything else you want to mention as we wrap up the show?
Not today. I think we've covered a lot.
Well, tell us where listeners can find you and Perfect Aminos.
Well, you can find us at bodyhealth.com. If you're a practitioner, reach out
Yep.
to
Yep.
Stephanie and she will lead you in the right direction. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
We
We're in
have a
Clearwater, Florida. Our clinic is LifeWorks Wellness Center, and look us up.
that's where you're at. Yeah. So listeners, you can use code Dr. Gray 20 for 20% off. The link I'll post in the show notes. And then last but not least, what is your top longevity tip?
Okay, I'll give you two.
Okay.
One for mothers. Please stop feeding your children anything that has food coloring in it. If it's illegal in another country, it should probably be illegal here.
Yes.
Uh,
Preach. Yeah.
as an adult, Lord, delete your social media. Put down your phone and try to get to as few hours of use a day, productivity or otherwise.
But listen to this podcast.
But listening is different than looking.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, different thing. But yeah, educating is one thing. Doom scrolling is going to be
a waste of, yeah, yep, agreed. As we open the show today, as you were joining Zoom, there was on your background just kind of a list of what is in a banana, and that's kind of how we started things, and that's kind of how we're wrapping up things with your advice. And that I had no idea just bananas could have dyes, could have additives. I mean, you just assume a banana is a banana, but it turns out that it isn't. So you need to watch for labeling of that banana. But that's just to your point of don't give your kids what's illegal that has, artificial dyes and chemicals and things that are outlawed. Here's the banana. Yep. Which here's the example. That was his screen as we opened the interview today. Pretty scary. I had no idea they were dyes and all kinds of crap in bananas.
So things that are used as dyes, right? Like it is, yeah. Ethylene gas, who knew?
No, I didn't. Okay. Learning every episode that I have. I'm learning along with my listeners. So this was awesome, Chase. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, sharing all your knowledge, all the benefits of amino acids. This was excellent. I think I'm going to go take another dose right now. So thank you.
Pleasure, Dr. Gray. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.